The neighbor was joking. She was like, the police are here for you, Sharon, but they actually were.
Uh-oh, they're coming for you, Sharon! They don't want me!
This case is wild. It's just happened in Marion County in Florida. In a retirement village in Florida, two neighbors were just stood outside their homes chatting. Now, the one neighbor thinks the other is called Sharon, but she'd actually been living under a false identity for years. She moved location, got a new name, got a new husband even. She started a totally new life. So you might be wondering, well, why did she have to get a fake identity and why is she about to be arrested? Sharon was actually Deborah Newton. Way back in 1983, Deborah had a husband called Joseph and a little girl, a 3-year-old girl called Michelle. One day, out of the blue, Deborah and Michelle totally vanished, completely into thin air, gone without a trace. And obviously the husband, Joseph, was absolutely devastated. He was totally stumped, couldn't see a reason why they'd gone. It made no sense. He was searching high and low, and so were police. But they had absolutely no luck. And then the locals started speculating that maybe they've both been abducted and killed. But police and the FBI had a sneaky suspicion Deborah was in on this. They were like, we reckon Deborah has kidnapped her own child because there is no evidence of a struggle and no evidence that the pair are dead. At one point, Deborah was even on the FBI's top 8 most wanted parental kidnapping fugitives list. So imagine everybody's surprise in this sleepy little retirement village when police get a tip-off to say, actually, there's a woman living here that kind of looks like that woman from a missing persons case 40 years ago. Officers showed up to Deborah's home and obviously the neighbor, bless her, thought she was making a funny joke. It's like, they're here for you, Sharon. She was actually watching a 40-year-old missing persons case get solved. Now, Michelle, bless her, the 3-year-old missing child, had no idea that she was even missing and is now in her 40s. She has reunited with her dad, Joseph, so I guess this case does have kind of a happy ending, and they're obviously now trying to make up for lost time. Goes out saying Deborah was arrested, is facing some pretty hefty charges, and the whole community is stunned. So many people had no idea they were actually living next to a fugitive. Does this case make anyone else think about Madeleine McCann? Because honestly, sometimes I do wonder if she's just gonna show up 30 years from now somewhere else.
Did you know that this Squid Game actor has been convicted of a horrific crime? Oh Young-soo has been in the acting business for decades, mainly working as a stage actor. However, in 2021, after the premiere of Squid Game, his fame skyrocketed. He was actually the first actor from South Korea to win a Golden Globe. No spoilers, but in the series he plays a lovable old man. However, in real life, to one woman, he is anything but. On 2 separate occasions in 2017, a then 79-year-old Oh S.'d a junior actress, touching her, hugging her and trying to kiss her without her consent. Due to the laws in South Korea, her name and her age will not be released to the public. The assault happened in 2017 and the young girl, absolutely terrified about what the repercussions could be of speaking out against a very well-known, prominent, powerful actor, may be in both her professional and her personal life. She attended counselling and would recount things in her personal diary. After the release of Squid Game in 2021, so a couple of years after the assault took place, the girl would file charges against Oh, which he profusely denied. The courts, however, would find him guilty of the charges, saying, quote, "The victim gave relatively consistent testimony, which aligned with entries from her diary written around the time of the incident. She informed people around her about the assault, and since the #MeToo movement was spreading in the theatre community at the time, she went to see the play Snow in March to receive an apology. The testimony also matches details from her counselling sessions, indicating that it's consistent with what only someone who had experienced the event could say." He was sentenced to 8 months imprisonment, which was later up to 12. 2 years probation, and was ordered to attend 40 hours of an SA treatment/rehabilitation program. Now in 2025, at 81 years old, he is currently appealing the charges.
You can tell if Chris Watts planned his family's murders by the meal he ate days before. This is why I find these murder investigations so fascinating. So everyone was suspicious of Chris Watts pretty much from the get-go, as soon as his wife Shanann and their 2 beautiful daughters went missing. When I was researching on my podcast deep dive on this case, one thing that really stood out for me is how police figured out not only that he did it, but also that he pre-planned it. Obviously, if you want the full case, it is out now on the Bourne investigation, but police found out essentially that he was having an affair with a woman called Nicole. Now, she came forward to officers and was like, he told me he had separated from his wife. We've been romantically involved for months now. And a crucial piece of evidence that Nicole came forward with was that he usually paid via gift card when they went out for meals together. So presumably he was using these gift cards so he could hide the affair from his wife. He was like, if I pay on gift cards, she can't see what I'm spending and where. But just before she vanished, Shanann was away on business and she saw a transaction pop up on their joint card. Her husband Chris was out having a meal at a restaurant. Shanann immediately saw this bill come through and felt like it was way too high. It was way more expensive than if you were just eating alone. So she obviously started getting suspicious. And remember, the mistress said, well, he usually paid on gift cards except for tonight. So why did he now not care about getting caught using the joint card this time? Well, Chris figured, what does it matter if my wife knows that I'm cheating now? I'm planning to kill her anyway. If you want the full 2-part deep dive, head over to the Bourne investigation. There's no way that I can go through all of these details on one TikTok.
They killed her over a pot of boiling water that they told her to go and get. If you don't know who I'm talking about Sonia Massey, a woman who was just murdered by this police officer. So they just released the body cam footage of this. It's horrific, but I will be playing this for you because you all need to see it if you haven't already. A little after midnight on July 6th, Sonia called 911 for help because she was worried that there was a prowler outside of her house in Springfield, Illinois. 2 Sangamon County Sheriff's deputies arrived, and one of those deputies is Sean Grayson. When police arrived to her home, they found a car outside with broken windows, so right away it seems that Sonia was completely justified in being scared and calling the police for help. Deputy Grayson and his partner go into Sonia's home to talk to her, and they notice a pot of boiling water on the stove. And for some reason, one of them says, quote, "We don't need a fire while we're here," end quote. So Sonia gets up to turn off the stove and remove the pot, just like they asked her to do. She makes a pretty common joke saying, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," and Deputy Grayson's response is sickening. I'm gonna play the footage now, so watch at your own risk.
We don't need a fire while we're here.
Right.
Huh?
Where you going?
Away from your hot steaming water.
Away from my hot steaming water?
Yeah.
Oh, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus.
I
Rebuke you in the name of
You better not. I swear to God, I'll shoot you right in your face.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Drop the pot! Drop the pot! Drop the pot!
19 shots fired.
Shots fired! Shots fired! Drop the pot! Bring EMS now. We got a headshot wound to the female. Headshot wound to the female. 1078.
But this gets even worse. The deputies call for backup, and as Sonia is laying there on the ground, literally choking on her own blood, just trying to survive, Deputy Grayson says this.
God. Yeah, I'm not taking boiling water in the head. And look, it's right to our feet too. God. Well, I mean, you know, what else do we do? I'm not taking hot boiling water to the face, and it already reached us.
As an innocent woman is dying right next to him, he's worried about hot water touching his feet. So they call for backup, and Deputy Grayson lies and says that Sonia was coming at him with the hot water, which we all saw is not true. His partner says that he's going to go and get a medical kit to try and help her, in which Deputy Grayson responds, quote, "Nah, she's done. You can go get it, but that's a headshot." End quote. While this is all happening, Deputy Grayson is talking to other officers who have since arrived outside. He goes on to say, quote, "Yeah, I'm good. This fucking bitch is crazy." End quote. What's also interesting to note is that Deputy Grayson didn't activate his body cam until after he shot Sonia. Luckily, his partner had his body cam on the entire time. Sean Grayson was indicted last week by a grand jury on 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count each of aggravated battery with a firearm and official misconduct. But of course he's pleaded not guilty. But Sean has since been fired. This all came after prosecutors reviewed the body cam footage and concluded that the use of deadly force was not justified. Now, what absolutely breaks my heart is the fact that authorities never even told Sonia's dad that it was a deputy who killed his daughter. According to him, he thought it was someone who broke in and killed her, and he didn't find out the truth until his brother read it on the internet. Sonia deserves justice, and we all need to share her story.
This man stole a woman's corpse, dressed her in a wedding gown, and slept next to her dead body for 7 years? I actually wish I was making this up, but this actually happened back in the 1930s in Key West, Florida. Like, of course it's Florida, where else? There's this older guy, his name's Carl Tanzler. He's a radiology tech at a hospital. Awkward, weird, definitely not somebody that you would swipe right on, and one day this woman walks in. Her name's Elena. She's 21, stunning, bright smile, but she's dying of tuberculosis. And Carl, he falls like hard immediately. Swears he's been having visions of this woman with dark hair who was supposed to be his one true love. So when he sees Elena, he's like, oh yeah, that's her, that's my wife. Except there's just one little problem. Elena never agreed to any of that. I mean, she was married and sick, fighting for her life, and had zero interest in Carl. But do you think that stopped him? Absolutely not. Instead, he starts love bombing her with gifts, jewelry, clothes, and does everything in his power to make sure that he could cure her. Spoiler, he couldn't. And sadly, Elena passed away in 1931 at just 22 years old. Now, at first, Carl is playing it cool. He built her this really fancy above-ground mausoleum with the family's blessing, but honestly, if they knew how weird he really was, then I'm sure that they would have said, hell no. Because here's where things start going just full cycle. Carl starts visiting her grave, which, I mean, it is normal, but then he starts seeing her every single night, like, obsessively. And after 2 years of that, I guess visiting just was not enough anymore, because one night, he breaks into the mausoleum with a wagon and steals Elena's body. He starts singing to her, dancing with her, sleeping next to her, but here's the problem with corpses, they decompose. So Carl started fixing her, and I'm talking silk and wax to reconstruct her skin, glass eyes in her skull, wires to keep her bones together, and when her hair started falling out, he made her a wig from her own hair that he had previously somehow gotten. He stuffs her body with rags to keep the shape. He sprays her down with perfume, disinfectants, chemicals, anything to cover the smell, and then he sleeps next to her body for the next 7 years, dressing her in a wedding gown, celebrating their anniversary, calling her his wife. So how does this finally come out, you're asking? Well, rumors started flying around town. People were like, hey, Carl is out here living with the whole corpse. And Elena's sister, she hears the whispers and she shows up to his house to see for herself. She finds the body, and I know what you're thinking. Okay, so surely the justice system locked him up immediately, right? No, Carl got arrested for grave robbery and corpse desecration, but then a week later, the charges got dropped. He just walks away freely. Why? Honestly, I couldn't even tell you. And if you thought he was done, oh girl, he goes home and he builds himself a life-size desk mask of Elena's face. Keeps it right here with him, and he sleeps next to that until the day he died. And I honestly don't know what to do with this information. Like, should I be horrified or should I be impressed by the level of commitment? Tell me in the comments, how would you react if you found out that your neighbor was sleeping next to a corpse in a wedding dress? Stay safe out there, and please take care of yourself, or I'm gonna be really mad at you. I love you. See you in the next one.
This is Gavin Peterson. He was a 12-year-old little boy who lived right down the road from me in this house right here. He died on July 9th after being abused by his dad, his stepmom, and his older brother for years. And more people need to know what happened to him and how our system is so broken, because it's not like nobody knew what was going on. His school filed multiple complaints because they knew he was being abused, and even his direct neighbor reported the family to police so many times, but nothing was ever done, and now he's dead. On July 9th, Weber County deputies were called to his home in West Haven, Utah. The caller, who I'm assuming was either his dad or stepmom, said that Gavin had been sick for several days, vomiting and having seizures, and on that day wasn't breathing anymore. When police arrived, they found Gavin unresponsive on the bathroom floor. Authorities tried doing CPR, but he was taken to the hospital where he later died. It was clear from the very start that Gavin was severely malnourished. His body was visibly emaciated, and he died because all of his internal organs completely shut down due to starvation and abuse. His death was quickly ruled a homicide. During the investigation, police found evidence that his dad, Shane Peterson, his stepmom, Nicole Scott, and his 21-year-old brother, Tyler Peterson, abused him for years. Shane told police that although Gavin had been having seizures for several days, they decided not to take him to the doctor. But Nicole and Tyler's account of what happened that day was not the same. Nicole said that Gavin was conscious when she found him in his bedroom covered in vomit. She said she then helped him into the shower and left the bathroom, but returned when she heard a loud noise and found him not breathing on the bathroom floor. She said she tried to revive him by giving him CPR and splashing water on his face. But Tyler told police that Gavin was already unresponsive while he was in his bedroom. Police discovered multiple cameras in Gavin's bedroom, and they also found really disturbing video footage. Authorities also found overwhelming evidence on all 3 of their cell phones that they all participated in the abuse, which consisted of beating and starving him, hitting him with a piñata stick, and on most days just not feeding him. If they did decide to feed him, they would only give him 1 piece of bread with some mustard, and if they felt like it, they would sometimes give him a 3rd cup of water. Police found multiple text messages between all 3 of them talking about how they all abused little Gavin together, like it was some type of fun game to them. How they watched him on the cameras, deciding whether or not they were going to feed him for the day and who was going to beat him. Police also found several photos on Nicole's phone that showed Gavin locked in his carpetless bedroom with no blankets, curled up on the floor wearing only a heavily saturated diaper. He was covered in feces and had sores all over his back. But of course, to try and conceal some of the evidence, they deleted a lot of those text messages and pictures before calling the police that day. But police were still able to find them. Police also found drugs in the home as well. Gavin's dad, stepmom, and brother have all been arrested and charged with reckless child abuse homicide, aggravated child abuse, and child endangerment. Nicole and Tyler have also been charged with obstruction of justice as well as possession of a controlled substance. They're all being held in the Weber County Jail without bond. It's sickening to know that this was all going on right down the road from me, yet I had no idea. I had no idea that this was a literal house of horrors, and it breaks my heart imagining Gavin's final moments. I truly don't understand why DCFS never got involved. Gavin was removed from school at the beginning of last year and put into homeschooling, but before he was taken out, the school district heavily suspected that he was being abused and reported this multiple times to DCFS. Even the bus driver was trying to sneak him food on the bus. The Petersons' direct neighbor even reported them to police on multiple occasions. According to them, for the past 10 years, Shane had been hostile and aggressive to his wife and kids. How come with all of these reports, nothing was ever done? His aunt started a GoFundMe on behalf of Gavin's mom to help with funeral expenses. And because I know people are going to ask, Gavin's mom lost custody of him when he was just a baby. According to court records, Gavin was found wandering outside unsupervised when he was supposed to be in his mom's care. And when he was returned, police found drugs out in his mom's home. So Shane was granted full custody. His mom was later charged in that case, but at the end of her probation period in 2016, she was granted some weekend and holiday visitation. But because of how severe Gavin's abuse and malnutrition was, it makes me wonder how often she or other family members saw him towards the end. Literally everyone failed Gavin, and now all that's left behind is this memorial outside of the home where his life was so brutally taken. Gavin's favorite color was blue, and he loved science and Pokemon. He was a beautiful little boy who will never get the chance to grow up.
Probably the most infamous serial killer couple of all time, Fred and Rose West. This was a couple made in hell. Like, the fact that these two people found each other is insane. What are the odds? Because they're just as evil as the other one. They're both just so sick and twisted. And they had like really similar childhoods. Spoiler alert, they were not happy childhoods. So Fred West grew up with a mother who said that she would break her boys in. And that means that she would sleep with her sons for their first time. And that's how Fred West lost his V card at only 12 years old. Fred's father also taught him that he could do whatever he wanted to whoever he wanted. So Fred West was a little creepy creep in his adolescence, trying to assault multiple other girls, including essaying his own younger sister, which he got like no repercussions for. Because of course he didn't. When Fred was an adult, he always had a thing for younger girls. Like when he was 19 years old, he got a 13-year-old girl pregnant. And a few years later, Fred got his first wife, Rena, pregnant. Around the same time, he got 3 other young girls pregnant, including a 17-year-old runaway named Anna, who tragically disappeared before she ever gave birth. Because that's the thing about Fred, everywhere he went, young girls would mysteriously vanish. So at the point that Fred met Rose, his first wife was not living with him because she was always kind of like bouncing in and out of his life. But their 2 children were living with Fred. Although his oldest child, Charmaine, was technically not his biological child, he did know about this and he did raise his child regardless. So now let's talk about Rose's upbringing and Rose's childhood before we discuss the horrific crimes that Fred and Rose committed together. So when Rose's mother was pregnant with her, she went through electric shock therapy multiple times, essentially deep frying Rose's brain while Rose was still in the womb. So as a baby, Rose was extremely docile and she would just like bang her head against the wall or the side of her crib. She was also essayed by her father at a very young age, and then she would go on to like use this to get what she wanted from her dad. She would also then go on to essay her younger siblings just like Fred did, and by 15 years old, Rose was an extremely messed up child with such a warped sense of intimacy. She was also extremely violent. At only 15 years old, people were extremely terrified of this girl. It was also at 15 years old that Rose met and started her relationship with the 27-year-old Fred West. And at only 16 years old, Rose would have her first of 8 children she would have with Fred, a little daughter they named Heather. So by 17, Rose was like the mother to 3 children. She was mothering her child with Fred, but also his 2 first children he had with his first wife, who was not at the picture at this point, and she was extremely abusive to all of these children, especially the oldest child, which was not biologically Fred, Charmaine. And at 17 years old, Rose killed Charmaine, who was only 8 years old, for literally no reason, and Fred did not seem to care at all. And then when Fred's first wife, Rena, came back around looking for her children, Fred killed her as well. So a little while later is when Fred and Rose moved into their now infamous house of horrors, where not only would Rose do S work in front of her children and also make them join in her S work, they built a dungeon of torture in the cellar of the home, where Fred and Rose would both equally take part in the kidnap, essay, torture, and murder of upwards of 30 young girls as young as 15 years old. The crimes that were committed in the cellar were some of the worst I've ever read about, and honestly, Rose might have even been worse than Fred. After inflicting full body injuries and wounds to their victims, Rose would force them to take baths of heavily salted water. I don't know what it was about that detail, but when I read that, it stopped me in my tracks. Fred and Rose's children, especially their daughters, would also suffer greatly down in this cellar. In Fred's life, it was normal that his mother broke him in, so he would do the same thing to his own daughters, essaying them as young as when they were 8 years old. And because it was, normal for Rose, this happened to her with her own father, she would then tell her very young children that this was their father's job. So in the early 90s, there was talk around town that, whispers got to the police officers that Fred and Rose's oldest daughter, Heather, has gone missing. And Fred, Rose, and their many children had a little family joke regarding the whereabouts of Heather. And it went, if you don't, behave, you're gonna end up just like Heather, buried under the back porch. It wasn't until 1994 that it was discovered that nobody had seen Heather since 1987. Police got a search warrant for the home, and that's where they found the remains of their daughter Heather in the garden, as well as the remains of many other young girls, which they were not expecting. They found one femur bone, and then another femur bone, and then they found a third. So they go up to them, and it's unless she had 3 legs, you're a serial killer. Not only did Fred confess to everything, but he actually took full responsibility for all of the murders, claiming that his beloved wife Rose had no involvement. Unfortunately, Fred would never go to trial, as shortly after this, he unalived himself in prison. Rose was being charged with 10 counts of murder, but she claimed that she had no involvement and that she was actually also a victim of Fred's. Ultimately, nobody bought this. There were a lot of people that testified that she was just as, if not worse than Fred. So Rose was sentenced to life in prison, where she is at to this day, and a year later, their infamous house of horrors was torn down to the ground. Many experts do believe that Rose was the dominant force in these horrific crimes being committed, which is extremely rare for a male and female criminal couple. It's usually the man that's the dominant force and the woman being more submissive. There are so many details in this case, you could really talk about it forever and forever. If only I had a podcast, right? Oh my gosh, okay, a podcast is coming. So I have all the equipment, I just don't have a name. The second I have a name, we're ready to go, okay? So if you guys have a name that you think would work with my personality that's not really out there, please drop it in the comments. While you're there, let me know all your thoughts on this horrific case and these horrific evil people, and let me know what case you want to see me cover next. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Kill 4 people, walk free, but steal $9, life in prison. Please explain to me how that makes any sense. Let's start with the first guy, Ethan Couch, 16 years old, rich as hell. This kid was drinking and driving himself to school at 13 years old, and when his principal found out about it, his dad threatened to just buy the whole school. Yeah, that kind of rich. One night, Ethan takes his dad's red pickup, drives himself to Walmart, and steals 2 cases of what I'll politely call grown-up juice and gets absolutely wasted. Then he speeds down a dark back road, going 70 miles per hour on a 40 zone, swerves swerving all over the place, playing this game called chicken. He loses control, crashes, and kills 4 innocent people. And you think, okay, at least this kid's finally gonna face consequences, right? The judge was ready to hit him with 20 years. 20 years, which, let's be honest, already sounded light. But here comes Ethan's defense team with the most insane arguments I've ever heard. Your Honor, he's just so rich and so spoiled, he literally doesn't know right from wrong. They called it affluenza, like the flu, but for spoiled rich kids. And the judge ate it up. He was like, you know what? That actually makes a lot of sense. And he gave him probation, no jail time, nothing, just a little slap on the wrist and a don't do it again, but must be nice. Now, let me tell you about Willie Simmons, black man from Alabama, homeless and struggling. Desperate to get drugs, he attacks a man and steals $9 out of his wallet. No weapon, didn't even hurt the guy. But because this was his 3rd time trying to steal, they hit him with life in prison. Life, no parole, no second chances. Oh, and get this, he didn't even have a real defense team. His entire trial lasted 25 minutes, and he's been sitting in a cell now for over 40 years, over $9. And I'm not saying that Wheelie should not have gotten arrested, but if $9 gets you life, then why shouldn't 4 bodies get you the same? I seriously need to know what you think, because I'm absolutely fuming over this one, but I love you guys. Please be safe out there.
This is honestly probably my most requested case to date. 19-year-old Jessica Chambers was found walking out of the woods, her entire body in flames, clinging to life. Jessica was born in 1995 in a tiny Mississippi town called Cortland, and I mean tiny, only around 500 people lived there, and it was the kind of small town where everyone did know everyone, but not the kind of town where people left their doors unlocked and everyone felt safe, because crime was common in that town. And a lot of people had a criminal record for minor things, major things, and one of those people included Jessica's biological dad, who once went to prison but was later released and got a job as a mechanic. When Jessica was little, only 3 years old, her parents got divorced, her dad got remarried, Jessica stayed living with her mom, and she ended up gaining a lot of step siblings. Jessica has been described as a very smart girl. She was also a cheerleader, and she was really close to her older brother Ben. But tragically, in 2012, while she was still in high school, Jessica lost her brother Ben in a horrible car accident. After that, when she was in high school, Jessica started hanging out with the wrong people, with the wrong crowd. She ended up getting arrested for selling Mary Jane, and at one point she also started dating a guy who was in prison, 28-year-old Travis Sanford. But even with all of that, Jessica was truly such a loved person. Her friends adored her, her family cared about her so much, and she was overall just the kind of girl that people liked. Now fast forward to December 6th of 2014. That day, Jessica told her mom that she was going to go to the gas station to get gas and said she would be right back. That was around 5 p.m. But Jessica never came back, and her mom started texting her after hours had passed, making jokes saying, "What did you do? Drive to Memphis?" But Jessica was not answering. Her mom called her. It went straight to voicemail. Her mom called her again, and this time she did pick up and said that she would be back very soon to clean her room. But something was off about that phone call. Her voice was so quiet, and in the background of the call, it was just strangely quiet as well. And then at 8:07 p.m., 911 receives a call of 2 men that were driving by calling to report a burning car. Firefighters showed up within minutes, and what they saw was scarring. They were all standing around the scene looking at this car up in flames, and out of the woods, all of a sudden, a girl starts walking out towards them in a terrible condition. She was burned from head to toe. All of her skin was charred. Her hair was gone. One firefighter by the name of Cole rushed to the girl and wrapped her up in a blanket. The girl collapsed near the truck and whispered something like, "Help me." The firefighter asked for her name and then says, "Who did this to you?" And the girl is trying to answer, but she's having such a hard time speaking. She's struggling so hard to get any kind of words out. It's so hard to understand her, but it sounds like she's saying something along like Eric, but then another firefighter says that it sounded more like Derek. And the girl keeps trying to say it more than once, but they cannot understand her. That girl was 19-year-old Jessica Chambers, and she was immediately life-flighted to a hospital in Memphis. When her parents found out and heard what happened to their daughter, they were horrified. Their stomachs sank when they learned that their daughter was in the hospital, and her mom was also confused because she had just been with Jessica. Jessica was only going to the gas station, so what happened? When her mom made it to the hospital, she ran into the room where Jessica was lying in. She wanted to be right next to her, but Jessica was barely clinging to life. Her mom could see how much pain she was in, and she leaned into Jessica, and in complete and utter devastation, she whispered to her, "It's okay, baby, we're here. If you need to go, you can go." Jessica then took one last breath and she passed away. 93% of her body was burned. The autopsy showed smoke inhalation and burns as her cause of death. And on Jessica's clothes, they found traces that she had been completely doused in gasoline. So whoever did this on purpose. But who would do something like this? Who would commit such a horrible crime seemingly out of nowhere? Investigators started an investigation almost immediately, and they began by tracing her last steps. Meanwhile, the internet was absolutely blowing up with rumors about what could have happened. People suspected the gas station clerk, but he was cleared as a suspect. Jessica's current boyfriend, he was in prison, so he was cleared as a suspect, and people at one point even started suspecting her father, but he was also eventually cleared. Jessica's mom, Lisa, tells officers that earlier in that day, she had been hanging out with a friend by the name of Kesha. They were driving around, and the police were able to confirm this, that Jessica and Kesha had been together driving around, and they also learned that there was a guy in the car with them, Quentin Tellis. Jessica had only known Quentin for around 2 weeks. He was 27 years old, lived with his mom almost directly across from the local gas station, and he had a criminal record. Burglary, jail time, you name it. So Quentin is brought in for questioning, and he says, yeah, I do know Jessica, but I don't really know her all that well. He confirms that he was in the car driving around with them, but then says that Jessica just dropped him off, and then that was that. But then investigators recover Jessica's phone, and they figure out that her and Quentin had been texting in the days leading up to the terrible accident and the morning of the tragic day. One text message from Quentin to Jessica read, "I'm," to which Jessica responded, "Oh Lord." They also then review CCTV footage from the gas station that night, and surveillance footage shows Jessica pulling in, walking towards the door, but then looking off to the side, almost as if she was talking to someone. She steps off camera, comes back into frame 2 minutes later, pays for her gas, and then leaves. But that was the last time that she was ever seen alive on video. So by this point, investigators had spoken to hundreds of witnesses and potential suspects, but the one and only person who really was starting to look suspicious was 27-year-old Quentin Tellis, given that they had been in contact in the days leading up to the accident as well as the exact day of. So his initial story is that him and Jessica are just friends, but the text messages between them lead investigators to believe otherwise. And they talk to him about this, and then he ends up changing his story, saying that yes, they had been romantically involved. He then admits that the two of them had been intimate in her car in a field behind his house. He says that they had done this multiple times, but not the day of the accident. So investigators decide to look into him a little bit deeper. They go and search his property, and at his property, they find a gas can in a shed behind his house, I think. Regardless, Quentin is holding on to his story that he was not with Jessica that night. He actually claimed that he had an alibi because he was in the near town of Batesville buying a prepaid card for his girlfriend. So investigators gathered that CCTV footage from that store in Batesville. And surveillance video does show him at that store purchasing a card at 8:26 p.m. And remember, the 911 call about the burning card came in at 8:07. The store that he was in, it was in a different town, but it was only around a 15-minute drive from the gas station. So realistically, he would have had enough time to get from the crime scene to that store. So it's not looking great for him, especially because it was proven that he already lied to the police once about saying they were just friends when really they were more than that. But still, police don't arrest him just yet. They let him go, but then a huge discovery is made when they get cell phone data back. And that data was very alarming because it showed that Jessica's phone and Quentin's phone had been moving together the night of the crime, from the gas station to behind his house to the scene of the fire. And then both phones go completely dark for around 37 minutes, which is when investigators believe that Jessica was unalived. Quentin keeps changing his story each time they approach him with new information, which again only proves that he was a liar. 14 months later, Quentin Tellis finally gets arrested and charged with capital murder. His trial does not begin until October of 2017. But in trial, it's the prosecutor's argument that Quentin was responsible for Jessica's passing. They suggested that his motive for this could have been that maybe Jessica rejected him, that she turned him down, that maybe she didn't want to be intimate with him that night, and that maybe that was the thing that made Quentin very angry. They believed that there was some sort of struggle, that Quentin went home, grabbed the gas, came back, and then set her and her car on fire. But the defense says, hold on, if Jessica knew him, if Jessica knew that she was with him that night, if she saw him and knew who did this to her, why would she not have said his name to firefighters that night when they asked him who it was? Why did she say something that sounded like Eric or Derek? Why would she not have just said Quentin if she knew who did it? The trial ended in a hung jury. It was declared a mistrial. In 2018, the second trial began. This time, they brought in a burn specialist who said that Jessica's injuries were so bad that she could not have been speaking clearly, meaning that what sounded like Eric or Derek could have been anything. They also showed bruising on her body that was not caused by the fire, backing up the theory that she was likely in some sort of struggle before the flames. Still, the jury cannot decide. 6 say not guilty, the other 6 say guilty. It's declared another mistrial. And then when it feels like it can't get any messier, it does, because in 2015, a 34-year-old woman by the name of Mandy is found brutally unalived in her apartment in Louisiana. Her body had been there for 10 days. Police find her debit card missing, and it's been used after she was already deceased. Card records leave them to Quentin Tellis, and then he's charged with card fraud and later on charged with her murder as well. Quentin is currently serving time for that in a prison in Mississippi, expecting to be released in 2027, but to this day, no one has ever been convicted for Jessica Chambers' death. Her mom passed away in 2021, never seeing justice for her daughter. I had heard about this case, but I did not realize that it went to trial and was declared a mistrial twice, and that no one is serving time for what happened to her. It's unbelievable, and it's so sad. Anyway, that is all I have for today's story. Let me know your thoughts on this, because honestly, what the thank you guys for spending time with me today and for listening to Jessica's story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Dispatchers shared her crime scene photos online and they went viral. 18-year-old Nikki Katsuras was from Orange County, California. She was described as outgoing, funny, and figuring out her life. On Halloween in 2006, Nikki took her father's Porsche without his permission. She was driving on the 241 toll road in Lake Forest when she lost control trying to pass another driver. Nikki clipped a Honda, spun across the median, and slammed into a toll booth. The crash was so severe that she died instantly. When police went to investigate the crash, Nikki's head was dismembered. It was split into two down the middle. Police took routine photos of the crash scene, but this is when things would turn horrific. 2 California Highway Patrol dispatchers shared these photos illegally, and they spread like a wildfire online. Nikki's family started receiving anonymous emails and messages, and they would get sent photos from the crime scene and even messages that said, "Hey daddy, I'm still alive." Trauma of losing their daughter was made so much worse. Family sued the CHP for invasion of privacy and emotional distress. After years in court, Nikki's family won a settlement of about $2.3 million, but no amount of money could erase those photos, and they are still online to this day.
This young man was found decapitated in some woodland, and his killer has still never been found. I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the unsolved murder of Ashley Dighton. Ashley Dighton was 19 years old and living in Ashford, Kent in 2007. He was described as caring, funny, loyal, and quote, the nicest man you could ever meet. Ashley loved music. He would dance and he would sing along to his favourite music, sometimes keeping his family up all night with his singing. He was just an all-round nice person and someone that was a joy to be around. He did, however, sadly suffer with alcohol addiction. On the 11th of June 2007, after spending the night at his sister Amanda's house, Ashley, Amanda and 2 of their friends made their way to the town centre. They had spent some time drinking that day and were kind of going from shop to shop trying to buy more alcohol. Eventually they all ended up at a Sainsbury's shop on Simone Weil Avenue. This is Ashley and 2 other people on CCTV capturing him walking into the shop. Ashley wanted to buy some beers that were on offer, however he didn't have enough money, so instead of walking around the shop with Amanda and their friends while they continued shopping, he stepped outside and eventually made his way to a nearby bench for a little sit down. The security guard, a man named Lucas, who was working, noticed Ashley and remembered him being very drunk. He was drinking what Lucas believed was a bottle of vodka that was concealed in kind of a brown paper bag. Lucas approached Ashley and kind of shooed him, told him to go away, and in response Ashley did just stand up and started to walk off in the direction of his home. He didn't get abusive, he didn't get aggressive or anything like that towards Lucas. He was drunk, but he was still kind of calm, non-confrontational. Lucas had followed Ashley down this sort of back path for a little while and watched him kind of continue to walk and stumble away.
this would be the last sighting of Ashley alive. When Amanda and the two friends came out of the Sainsbury's shop and found that Ashley wasn't there, no alarm bells immediately rang. Ashley lived with his dad Ambrose, but he would very much float between Ambrose's house and Amanda's house. So Amanda just assumed that Ashley had went back home, he'd went to Ambrose's house, and because Ashley didn't have a phone, she couldn't exactly ring him to check. But like I say, there was no alarm bells going off immediately. It did take 10 days for anybody to realise that nobody knew where Ashley was, and upon this realisation, the police were immediately called. Over 100 officers participated in a massive search for almost 3 weeks to try and find Ashley. And on the 11th of July, exactly 1 month after he was last seen, the body of Ashley Dighton was found in some scrubland in some bushes close to the Sainsbury's shop. These are some pictures of the woodland behind the Sainsbury's where Ashley was found. It was called the Dip. Ashley had been decapitated and his fingers had been removed along with his clothes. It was believed that his head and his fingers had been removed in an attempt to conceal his identity. Around 100 metres away from Ashley's body, there was a plastic bag found, and inside was Ashley's t-shirt along with one of his ribs. It was determined by decomposition that Ashley had been dead for around about 1 month, so likely he was murdered on the day that he'd went missing, the day he was last seen at the Sainsbury's store. It was also deemed that Ashley's head and his fingers had been removed post-mortem, so the killer had murdered Ashley, left his body, and then went back, potentially multiple times, to dismember him. Because of this, the pathologist wasn't able to determine a cause of death. Since Ashley's death, there have been multiple arrests, but still no one has been charged and justice has not been served. The evil, sadistic, vicious, dangerous people or person who done this to Ashley are still out in the general public and they need to be found. It has been 16 years since Ashley was cruelly taken away from his family at 19 years old. His sisters and his family have made many pleas for information and have begged people to come forward, even just to reveal where Ashley's head is so that he can be buried and put to rest fully. Ashley deserves that at least, and his family deserve it too. If you have any information about Ashley Dighton's murder, you can contact Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. You can support Ashley's family by following and joining their Facebook group, #JusticeForAshleyDighton, and you can go ahead to the person who left the comment that I tagged earlier on in the video, that is Shawnee, who is one of Ashley's sisters. You can go and show her tons of support. I'm sure that their family would really appreciate it.
Imagine suddenly finding yourself on a missing persons website. It was 2011 in Philadelphia and Steve Carter was just getting ready for work. And he was doing what he always did, kind of half paying attention to the news while he was getting ready, but suddenly a segment flashed up that really caught his eye. It was this crazy case where a woman had no idea she was actually missing until she spotted herself on a missing child's website. Then it all came out that she was abducted as a child. Well, history was about to repeat itself. And he couldn't stop thinking about this story that he'd seen in the morning, so on his lunch break he decided to go onto the website. He was like, do you know what? I'm adopted. Like, I wonder if something had gone on in my childhood too. He actually said that he'd had a really lovely, amazing childhood. His adoptive parents couldn't have been nicer. But he did always wonder who his biological parents were, so he went onto the missing child's website. He typed in Hawaii male missing 34 years, and he could not believe what popped up on the screen and was now staring back at him. He was like, holy crap, that's me. He said literally, apart from the mullet, the age progression image was like staring at his twin. And the details on the website were absolutely chilling. This baby had been 6 months old, a little boy called Marks. In 1977 in Hawaii, his mum, Charlotte, had taken him out for a walk and had never returned. It sounds like she was really having some serious mental health issues because she just turned up at a stranger's house. She seemed to be pretty confused, and I guess the stranger asked what her name was and what her child's name was, and she gave fake names. Authorities headed over there and was like, okay, this woman is seriously going through something's not right here, and this child is not safe. The mum was admitted to a psychiatric hospital and baby Marks was taken into care. Meanwhile, the boy boy's poor dad was sick with worry. He was driving up, down, trying to scour the city to find his son anywhere. Sadly, because the fake names had been given, it made it virtually impossible to track them down. Eventually, the baby boy was actually put up for adoption and adopted by a lovely couple 3 years later. So after Steve found this on this website, he showed a bunch of his friends. He was like, do you think that looks like me? And they were like, absolutely. They were like, you definitely need to contact somebody. So he went through the whole process, the whole rigmarole of getting DNA tests done. Eventually, it was confirmed he was the missing child. And that wasn't all he discovered. He found out he actually had an older sister called Jennifer. Sadly, Steve actually didn't manage to reunite with his biological dad before he passed away in 2023, I believe. But they did have some phone calls and shared some letters, and I think they kind of put some pieces of the puzzle together themselves. Steve's dad said it had sent him absolutely crazy for years not knowing what had happened to them both. I guess there was some kind of comfort in the fact that Steve actually grew up to be incredibly happy. As for Charlotte the mum, it is a bit of a mystery what happened to her. Apparently, after she got admitted to that psychiatric unit, she just suddenly vanished a few days later.
The case that we're going to be discussing today has been widely known on the internet as the Henrietta Sleepover Massacre, where at a sleepover in Oklahoma, 5 children and a mother were all killed. This case is so very heartbreaking and frustrating, and you guys are going to be so very angry when you hear the details of it, but I do have a way that you guys can help by signing a petition in my bio if you just stick around to the end. In 2003, Jesse McFadden attacked a 16-year-old girl named Crystal. He SA'd her while he held a sharp weapon up to her neck. For this crime, Jesse was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and in 2016, he reoffended while behind bars. Somehow, while Jesse was in prison, he was able to get a cell phone, and when he was caught with this cell phone, they found that he had been communicating with another 16-year-old girl named Caitlin in a very graphic and explicit manner. For this crime, Jesse was being charged with soliciting a minor and also being in possession of CP, charges that could land Jesse another 20 years in prison. But his trial was being delayed multiple times. And for whatever reason, despite clearly showing that Jesse had not rehabilitated in prison, continued to reoffend while he was behind bars, and had also not even yet gone to trial for that additional crime he committed while he was in prison against another child, Jesse McFadden was released early. He was released 3 years early in October of 2020. And when Jesse McFadden was released, he was not on probation. He was out living free. Although he was now a registered SA offender, his community was not made aware when he moved in that a dangerous man was now living in their neighborhood. In 2022, Jesse McFadden became the stepfather to 3 teenagers, including 2 teenage girls, when he married Holly Guess. Holly's children were 17-year-old Riley Allen, 15-year-old Michael Mayo, and 13-year-old Tiffany Guess. All 3 children had different biological fathers, but all of them referred to Tiffany's father, Joe, as their dad, since he pretty much raised all of them. He had been in Riley's life since she was 1 and had been in Michael's life his entire life, and even planned on adopting Riley and Michael even after he divorced their mother, Holly. As far as I know, Joe and Holly, despite now being divorced, were civil, and they had an agreement that if they were going to bring anyone into their children's lives, that person had to first be vetted by a background check. And Holly told her ex-husband Joe, her new husband Jesse McFadden's background check came up clean, even though we know that that's a lie. Holly's mother, the grandmother of Riley, Michael, and Tiffany, has come out and said that her daughter was aware that Jesse McFadden's background check did not come up clean, but that he had hired an actress, allegedly hired an actress to play as his victim and talk to her daughter Holly and say that the entire thing was a misunderstanding and that her daughter Holly had been fooled by Jesse. Regardless, and I don't want to seem like I'm victim blaming here at all, these are just the facts, Holly did lie to the father of her children that Jesse's background check came clean, and she even allowed the children of other parents to come over and stay the night at her house without telling them about her husband's criminal background. Which brings us to the weekend of April 28th, 2023. 13-year-old Tiffany invited her 2 best friends, 14-year-old Ivy Webster and 15-year-old Brittany Brewer, to come and sleep over at her house for the weekend. This was not an uncommon thing. The girls had stayed over at Tiffany's house before. The only thing different about this weekend was that Tiffany's stepfather, Jesse McFadden's trial from the crimes he committed in prison in 2016 was supposed to be starting that following Monday on May 1st, 2023, a court date he did not plan on attending. When Ivy and Brittany never came home Sunday evening like they were supposed to from the sleepover and their parents could no longer get a hold of them, the girls were both reported missing by their families. The situation even got more terrifying when Jesse McFadden never showed up for his court date the following day. And by 3 p.m. on May 1st, the authorities had gotten a search warrant for the house, and on the property they found 7 dead bodies, including that of Jesse McFadden. Jesse had killed his wife Holly, her 3 children Riley, Michael, and Tiffany's 2 best friends Ivy and Brittany before he unalived himself. The investigators really dropped the ball on this investigation. Only after a couple days, the family members were allowed to walk through the home where their children had been killed. Not only did the family members find evidence that the investigators had missed, but they were left to see this terrible scene of what their children's final moments were like. In the home were several beds and other pieces of furniture that had restraints, chains, and padlocks attached to them. There were graphic adult toys and also hard substances in various rooms. We do know that Ivy and Brittany were both SA'd, and it does appear that everyone in the house was tortured. For how long, we do not know. And it was proven that some of those items, including the padlocks, had been purchased by Jesse just a few days prior to this mass murder, proving that this was something that he had planned. And also Joe, Tiffany's father, and the man that also raised Riley and Michael, found out that all of his children were dead via a Facebook post. The authorities could not even bother to have given him a call. The way that the justice system handled a criminal like Jesse McFadden is appalling. It's the most catastrophic failure that I've read about in a very long time. Ivy Webster's mother, Ashley, is very active on this app. I do have her tagged below. If you guys want to go over there and show her some love and support, I think she would really, really appreciate that. She is actively trying to spread her daughter's story, as well as trying to spread awareness to other families and other young girls that there are men like Jesse McFadden out there. Ivy's family also had a petition, which I talked about a little bit in the beginning of my video. With this petition, they're trying to have a law passed that they called Knight's Law. This was named after the mascot at the school district that all the 5 children attended. With this law, they are trying to have stricter laws and stricter sentences against predators that commit crimes against children, as well as getting more education to law enforcement officers, educators, and welfare agents. I strongly encourage all of you guys to click the link in my bio. You'll see it right there at the top, and sign that petition. I wholeheartedly support Ivy's family and what they're trying to do, and also wholeheartedly support Knight's Law. So thank you so much in advance for signing that petition. Before all of their lives were stolen, Holly's mother describes her daughter as a beautiful woman who truly did love her children. Riley was described as an extremely artistic and creative girl with dreams of being an artist or a doctor one day. Michael was described as being very athletic. He also really enjoyed video games like most teenage boys do, and he also had an interest in engineering. Tiffany was said to be extremely smart and sweet, and she loved cross-country and choir. Brittany was an extremely outgoing girl. She never knew a stranger, and she had dreams of being a teacher when she grew up. And Ivy's mother, who I got to speak to today, described her daughter Ivy as being incredibly sweet. She loved animals of all kinds, and she wanted to work with animals one day. She loved to play softball. She loved to watch horror movies, and she really could not wait to one day travel the world. A lot of people don't know this, but there are free websites and free services that will show you every single SA offender in your area. This is something that every parent needs to know. Like familywatchdog.us, they will show you every offender. They'll show you their name, their photo, what they did, and they categorize it. All of the red dots are people that committed crimes against children. You can also sign up for free notifications that will show you when offenders move and move out of your area. Also, please do not forget to sign that Knight's Law petition. I have it in my bio. It's right at the top. You will not be able to miss it. Thank you guys so much in advance. Thank you so much for listening to this case today, for listening to Holly, Riley, Michael, Tiffany, Ivy, and Brittany's story. I love you guys so, so much and what you allow me to do with this huge platform you've given me, and I will see you tomorrow.
This is the story of Gavin Henderson. 2017, Dunwoody, Georgia. 27-year-old Gavin moved in with his mother and his 3 siblings, who are all girls, by the way, after doing several years in a Florida prison for various crimes he committed. He was short-tempered, easily angered. He seemed like he didn't have it all in the cabeza, because after being home for only a few months, Gavin was at home with his 21-year-old sister, Sierra Henderson, and he was trying to get her attention of some sort, but she completely ignores him. This made Gavin offended. So offended that he tried to argue with her, and when she still wasn't paying him no mind, he punched his sister in the face, then threw her to the floor. and left the room briefly, only to return with a black knife in his hand. Sierra bolted to her room to call their mother, but Gavin followed her, took the phone out of her hand, and put the knife to her face and told her to call the police because he was ready to go. When he seen Sierra started to cry, he immediately left the apartment. She was able to call her mother and let her know what happened, and her mother rushed home. When she got home, she called Gavin back to the apartment. When he arrived back to the apartment, he still had the knife in his hand. His mother told him that Sierra could press charges on you and you can go back to jail. And this is when he started going off again. His mother said, you can't be in this house with this knife or any other weapon. So she took the knife, hid it along with every knife in the apartment, and put them in her closet. June 18th, 2018, just 2 months later, Gavin's mother and his 21-year-old sister Sierra went off to work. That leaves his 15-year-old sister Kiera and his 11-year-old sister Z there with him. At around 3 p.m., Gavin goes to use the restroom, but Kiera's in the restroom. And when he told her that he had to use the restroom and she didn't get out immediately, the two started arguing. Now, the 11-year-old heard the arguing, but it was just a typical day in the household. She didn't really think nothing of it. Gavin went to go get a clipboard to try to pry the door open. As he's doing this, he has his cell phone in his hand. And just when he was about to get the door open, Kiera slams it again, knocking the phone out of Gavin's hand and breaking it. Kiera came out the restroom, but at that point, Gavin was enraged. So enraged that he hit Kiera. That's when she called her big sister Sierra to let her know what happened. That's when they both threatened Gavin that they were going to call their mother. That's when Gavin went to his room to get a knife. When Kiera seen the knife, she ran out of the apartment screaming, banging on neighbors' doors. Now, the 11-year-old is now outside of the room trying to see what's going on because she heard the screaming. When she opened up the door to the breezeway in the apartment, she seen Gavin stabbing her sister to death. She yelled for him to stop. Then she ran back in to call 911. The neighbors in the apartment complex also called 911 because they heard the screams and they heard her knocking and yelling for help. When the police arrived on the scene, Gavin was nowhere to be found. But when they seen Kiera laid in the breezeway of the apartment building, they knew she was dead. It's documented that Gavin stabbed his little sister 47 times, including 2 in the face and several in the back. Before the manhunt can even begin, the police get a 911 call from a convenience store clerk. Gavin had walked a half a mile to a convenience store and asked the clerk to call 911 because he just killed somebody. The clerk said after he started dialing 911, Gavin placed a bloody knife on his counter and started wandering around the store. When he heard the sirens approaching, he walked out with his hands up, surrendering. As the police was putting him in handcuffs, he told them, just take me to the county. And if anybody mess with me there, I will kill them too. When they took Gavin in for questioning, they told him that his sister did not make it. And he said, thank God. They asked him what happened, and he said he blacked out, but continued to tell investigators exactly every detail of the crime. That's not how blacked out work, dummy. He said he was in a trance, and he only snapped out of that trance when his 11-year-old sister yelled, stop. Gavin ultimately pled not guilty. He said that this was an accident, a crime of sudden passion. He simply had to use the restroom. His defense team was going for voluntary manslaughter, which is crazy. In July of 2021, a jury found Gavin Henderson guilty of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, cruelty to children in the first degree, and possession of a knife. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. I try so hard not to wish death upon people, but it's shit like this that makes it tough for me. Cause what the... Yo, baby sister? Come on, man.
This 5-year-old was crushed by an elevator and it was all caught on camera. 5-year-old Mohammed lived in Mumbai with his family. His father worked at a garment shop, his mother was a stay-at-home mom, and he had 2 sisters. On November 28th of 2020, Mohammed and his 2 sisters were heading back to their apartment in their old residential building. Now, this was no modern elevator. It had a manual lift, meaning you had to slide open a metal gate and then open a second door to lead you to your floor. This elevator had no automatic sensors or safety locks. The footage begins with the three siblings riding up together. The elevator stops at the 4th floor and Muhammad's sisters step off safely. He follows them and closes the metal gate behind him, but then the wooden door that leads to their floor closes as well. In that moment, Muhammad is caught between both doors. He's not fully in the elevator and not fully out. Some people speculated that maybe Muhammad's sisters closed the door as a prank, but later investigators confirmed that it was caused by an outdated design. Another resident called the elevator lift from a higher floor, and as the elevator was moving, Muhammad was stuck between those two doors. He was crushed and then fell down the shaft and suffered fatal head injuries. Muhammad's mom realized that something bad had to have happened when she saw bloodstains on the elevator while searching for him. Neighbors had rushed to help, but it was already too late. Police registered his death as accidental, and they launched an investigation into negligence, and locals demanded for safer elevators. Many argued with modern automatic lifts this could have been prevented.
This is the story of Cassidy Goodson. Early 2012, Lakeland, Florida, 14-year-old Cassidy's brother and sister noticed that she's been acting kind of strange lately. She was becoming distant at home and always staying in her room. Cassidy's classmates and friends also noticed the change. The once petite athletic girl started to look different. Cassidy was gaining weight. The summer rolled around and Cassidy is still wearing baggy sweatshirts. She's wearing sweatpants. She's not playing soccer no more. She's barely even talking to her friends. This led to a rumor around the school that her weight gain is due to her being pregnant. Cassidy's aunt got wind of this rumor and decided to call her sister Teresa, who is Cassidy's mother. When Teresa confronted Cassidy, Cassidy said, "Not only am I not pregnant, but I am still a virgin." Cassidy's mother thought her weight gain was just from her being a growing teenager and going through changes, until Cassidy's other aunt came to her like, "I think you need to give her a pregnancy test or take her to the doctor because something ain't right." Teresa went out and bought a pregnancy test for Cassidy, and when it came time to take the test, she let Cassidy go in the bathroom and take the test alone. When Cassidy handed her mother the test, it was negative, and Teresa is relieved. Even though Cassidy is still wearing big clothes in the summertime, she said we can get on back to our lives. On September 17th of 2012, Cassidy fell ill. She was so sick to where she was vomiting, followed by diarrhea. The next day, on the 18th, her mother seen how sick she was and decided to make her a doctor's appointment. On the morning of September 19th, Cassidy was feeling worse than the day before. She went into the restroom that was attached to her room at around 7 a.m. She did not come out of that restroom till about 10 a.m. She went into the restroom feeling like she had to defecate. The pressure moving through her body urged her to push. She felt in between her legs and felt the head of her baby. As she's pushing, she grabbed a towel to bite down on so nobody could hear her scream. She grabbed a pair of scissors that was nearby and tried to pry the baby out of her. The baby fell in the toilet and a placenta followed. Cassidy checked to see if the baby was still alive, and when she seen that it was, she placed her hand around the baby's neck and choked him until he stopped breathing. Once she seen that the baby was no longer living, she cut the umbilical cord and cleaned herself and the baby up. It was so much blood in that bathroom that it tracked inside of her room as well. At around 1 p.m., Teresa goes to check on Cassidy and see that she looks drained and tired. She also sees the blood in and around the toilet seat. That's when she decides to take Cassidy to the emergency room. The doctor told her that Cassidy showed signs of a miscarriage and that she had 5 lacerations on the inner wall of her vagina. That same visit, Cassidy decided to go along with the miscarriage story and told her mother, "Yes, I indeed had a miscarriage, and I flushed the fetus down the toilet without looking." Cassidy was treated and sent home. On September 22nd, just a couple days later, Teresa was collecting all of the dirty clothes from her children, something that she always does. When she got to Cassidy's room, she smelt a foul odor. When she got to her dirty clothes hamper, she seen wet, bloody clothes. She's thinking it's just clothes from the miscarriage. As she's separating the wet clothes, at the bottom is a shoebox. Inside that shoebox was her grandson, wrapped in a bag. In a panic, she called her sister, who's Cassidy's aunt, and the aunt is the one who called the police. When asked why she went through such great lengths to hide this pregnancy, she said that she did not want her relationship with her mother to change. The autopsy report showed that the baby was full term, 9.5 pounds, 20 inches long. The cause of death was strangulation. The boy she was pregnant by was also a teenager and they attended the same school. They was no longer in communication, so he had no idea that she was pregnant. They asked, was it consensual? And she said it was. On September 27th, Cassidy was officially charged with taking her newborn's life. The next month, in October, they decided to try her as an adult. Now, with her being only 14, the death penalty was off the table, but she was facing life in prison. But just so happened that earlier that same year, a U.S. Supreme Court ruling determined that mandatory life sentences for minors were unconstitutional. In December of 2012, Cassidy was offered a plea deal, and she took it. She pled guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 18 months in a maximum juvenile facility, and she also had to complete a program as well. Her mother stood by her side the whole time. She said Cassidy has always been a good kid. When Cassidy got out from doing her time, not everybody was so welcoming. She lost a lot of friends. She even got some death threats. Last I seen of Cassidy, she was married and she went on to have 2 daughters. What y'all think? Yellow, I'm on a fence with this one. Yeah, she was 14. She was young. She was scared. But she also knew better. I get you was scared when you was young, but damn, killing the baby? What y'all think?